The shot opens on slow motion, red wine arcing through crystal, a splash that blooms like a dark flower across an expensive jacket. A phone lens catches every droplet. The glass refracts chandeliers into a rain of light. The room exhales in a single recorded gasp. On-screen text, without knowing he was the owner. The camera lingers on a face that doesn't belong to the noise, calm, unshaken, dusting a shoulder as if the stain were nothing. A string quartet hums under polite laughter. The gala smells of perfume and lemon-scented polish. Servers in black move like clockwork. Tonight, everything is for show. The tables, the speeches, the handshake that will seal an $800 million partnership. Hail Quantum is supposed to close the deal before dessert. The CEO will toast. The press will smile for the photos. The room has already chosen its hierarchies. Jamal Rivers stands at the edge of the ballroom, a glass of mineral water in hand. He wears no flashy watch. His suit is navy and impeccably cut, but not shouting. He is easy to miss by design. Where others project, he conserves. His eyes watch the crowd with a quiet patience. He is not a man who seeks the spotlight. He does not need it. A man like him creates edges by touch, funding, counsel, the infrastructure under other people's empires. Tonight, he is here because his capital underwrites the partnership on every signature and every clause. Very few people in this room know it. The camera moves through the crowd. A woman in sequins adjusting her earpiece, a group of investors comparing notes, a table of journalists rehearsing a headline. Richard Hale stands at the center of the stage, delivering the practiced charm of a man who has grown comfortable being the face of everything he did not entirely build. He holds the mic as if it were a scepter. Beside him, Vanessa Hale is all bright lipstick and sharper edges, laughing faster than the joke merits. Theirs is a performance of dominance, an older couple declaring ownership by volume and glare. Jamal listens to the CEO's smooth cadence without interruption. He answers the occasional nod when introduced, accepts congratulations with the same measured smile he reserves for everything that requires patience. He speaks only when spoken to. That stillness attracts attention the way a quiet current pulls at a boat without waves. If you love moments when power quietly upends spectacle, subscribe now. It's the kind of story that doesn't end at the right clap. Between courses, Vanessa drifts through the room like a climate, warm where she wants to be admired, cold where she wants to control. She notices Jamal because he does not notice her. He stands in the background, polite, a presence she assumes is a staff member or a modest benefactor. Her eye slides past guests of consequence to a man who answers only when addressed and does so with a deferential bow. She moves toward him, the kind of attention that thinks itself benevolent. But Jamal does not fold. He stands a fraction taller. He blinks as if correcting an optical error. He straightens his jacket. He touches the wet cloth again, and then, as if prompted by an invisible cue, he turns toward the exit. The trip from the ballroom to the hallway is a study in contrast. Inside, chandeliers and laughter. Outside, the corridor smells of stone and the quiet of a building designed to absorb sound. Jamal walks with an unassuming pace, hands mostly at his sides. When he reaches the glass doors, a wall of whispered commentary presses at his back. The camera follows him in a single tracking shot, then cuts to close-ups. A phone screen capturing his retreat, a guest's brow furrowed in a deferred discomfort, the waiter's hands trembling. Microhooks click. Someone mutters, "Who is he?" The question hangs like smoke. In the elevator, Jamal checks his reflection, not for vanity, but to measure the stain spread. He does not rehearse revenge, nor does he misstep into public performance. Instead, he pulls his phone from an inner pocket, finds a name, and holds it to his ear. The words he speaks are spare, precise. He does not shout. He does not rattle off instructions in excruciating detail. His voice is a calm instrument, and the people on the other end understand the rhythm of consequence.
Notify legal, he says. Pause the transfer. Hold public statements. Initiate the termination process. He lists nothing elaborate. The direction is clear and immediate. The team in his network mobilizes because they have always moved at his pace. In rooms where other men have built empires on optics, Jamal's network operates on authority anchored in capital and contracts. A terse conversation is all it takes. Sound design slices in, the elevators hum, the faint click of a phone ending, then a subtle swell of low electronics, underscoring a wall of reactions. The narrative element is not the technicality of what he asks, but the speed and the trust with which it is carried out. Cut to the ballroom. The host is mid-applause, raising his glass to a camera, when someone's phone pings. A video, 3 seconds of wine, 2 of a dismissive laugh, 1 of Jamal's steady composure, has already made a second life. It moves from handset to handset, a contagion. Laughter sputters as the footage repeats, but now accompanied by text messages. Is that the investor? He looks familiar. The room recalibrates in real time. The social temperature drops. On the other end, the legal team receives an order and acts. Scenes overlap. A junior counsel in an office pulling up documents. An operations head on a secure line flushing updates to Treasury. A compliance officer drafting a public statement that reads more like a termination notice than damage control. The edits are surgical and wordless for the viewer. The point is the speed. The company that felt invulnerable finds itself subject to the instrument Jamal commands simply because he chose to use it. Sound design slices in, the elevators hum, the faint click of a phone ending, then a subtle swell of low electronics, underscoring a wall of reactions. The narrative element is not the technicality of what he asks, but the speed and the trust with which it is carried out.
The clip of the humiliation continues to circulate. That same video, shot with shaky forearms and reposted by a bored influencer with a vivid caption, becomes a public mirror. At first, it is an object of amusement, then a mutating accusation. Context shifts as people outside the room begin to piece together what they see. Social media fragments the narrative and then compacts it. Owner insulted, CEO humiliates investor. How could they? Screens in the ballroom go from sparkle to static as messages flood feeds. The host's practiced smile slackens. Richard's face drains of color. Vanessa's composure is raw and streaked with the realization that what she meant as a spectacle can now be repurposed against her. The script of consequence is unromantic and efficient. A halt on the transfer, an announcement that the terms will not proceed, a contract pulled pending investigation. No lawyers shout on camera, no dramatic court rulings read like theater. Instead, there are small, irreversible actions. Accounts put on hold, wire transfers paused, board discussions called, that, together, shutter the mechanics of the $800 million commitment. Montage. A bank interface flickers red. A lawyer's fingers type terminated in a corporate letterhead. A conference room buzzes as executives call investors to explain. A go-to-market team watches as marketing collateral goes dark. Overnight, headlines assemble themselves like scavengers. Deal falls apart. Hail quantum in turmoil. The tone is not just financial, it is moral, the curious moral calculus of a public that delights in a fall. The next morning, the collapse is clean and title. Investors withdraw, citing grave concerns. A few sympathetic board members resign with statements about misaligned leadership. The company's stock, real or symbolic in the narrative, slides. Vanity metrics that once mattered become irrelevant in the face of an image that will not leave feeds. PR statements are written on the fly and then revised. Apologies are drafted and then deleted. Each delay compounds the perception of chaos. Vanessa reads the morning headlines in a bathroom with fluorescent lights that do not flatter. The lipstick that matched the chandeliers now looks absurd under the harsh light. She scrolls through posts, and every clip she once enjoyed is now a sharpened knife. Social commentary traces her name with relish. Richard paces an office that suddenly feels smaller.
The trophies on the shelf seem like props in a theater whose director left. By midday, the couple makes a decision that the public will later call desperation. They dispatch a private message that ends in a plea for a meeting with Jamal. Their request is humble in tone, a sudden inversion of the arrogance they wore the night before. They call him directly, through channels they assume he will answer, the same channels that now flash with stories he has seen.
When Vanessa and Richard arrive at Jamal's townhouse, the camera holds the exterior for a moment. Rain has begun to patter, as if the city itself recognizes the gravity. They are smaller there, in the muted foyer, clinging to a thin thread of hope. They knock with an urgency that admits shame. The doorman is courteous, distant, and Jamal's name is announced without fanfare. He opens the door himself, a silhouette backlit by a hallway lamp. They do not burst into accusations. They ask, contrite and clumsy. "Please," Richard says, voice soft in a new register. "We didn't mean—" Vanessa interrupts, voice breaking in a way that strips artifice. "We are sorry. We'll do anything. Can we fix this?" Jamal studies them. The camera reads his face like an instrument. Not triumph, not gloating, but an appraisal of cost. He has waited for this moment to say what needs to be said, not to relish it. He wants them to understand the principle they violated, not merely the practical fallout. "You humiliated a man because you assumed who he was," he says. His words are calm. They land with a weight that is not theatrical, but absolute in its clarity. You used status as permission to wound. That is the mistake. Richard reaches for a plea. "If we reverse the statement, if we apologize publicly—" His sentence trails into negotiations, the currency of the old world. But Jamal is not a man in search of performative absolution. "I accepted the humiliation," Jamal replies. "I could have made a show of wrath. I could have sued or turned this into a spectacle of retribution. I chose something else." He folds his hands, not in prayer, but in a posture of finality. "You misunderstand how this world works. Respect is not a line item. It's the ledger by which we measure our conduct. When you write people off, the debt comes due." Vanessa's eyes fill. The plea for mercy becomes the spectacle of regret, but Jamal does not hand it back. He will not broker a simple transaction where once there was cruelty. "I will not enable your restoration with a false veneer," he continues. "You will have to rebuild whatever dignity you've thrown away, and you will do it without my capital." There is no melodrama, no door slams. Jamal closes the conversation with a quiet directive. "Go. Learn what you must. Walk carefully. The world is smaller than you believe." They leave with their apologies caught in their hands like broken glass. The camera follows their retreat until they are a mobile of shaking lines and apology rehearsals. Jamal stands in his doorway as rain begins to settle the city's edges. He does not celebrate. He does not call his friends to gloat. He closes the door because the night is done, and because dignity is not a thing you parade. In the days that follow, the narrative settles into a pattern of consequence and reflection. Commentators replay the clip and parse the dynamics. Some offer takes on entitlement, others on corporate collapse. The story becomes a template for how appearances mislead. Hale Quantum scrambles to salvage whatever reputation it can, but the mechanics of trust snapped. New investors hesitate. Media cycles demand faces and apologies, and then demand them louder. The company's old architecture, built outwards to catch the applause, cannot withstand the internal erosion of trust. But the end is not only about ruin. Jamal's action forces a reckoning about how public name and private control often live in different houses. People begin to ask, who holds the real power? Is it the person on stage or the one who decides, quietly, to withdraw the oxygen? Social media amplifies the question, turning it into a broader conversation about class and manners.
about the arrogance of being certain and the danger in assuming smallness. At a lecture hall weeks later, a professor references the incident as an example of consequence in the era of instant documentation. In office buildings, HR teams pass memos about respect and dignity. In families, older members tell younger ones a new cautionary tale. Do not mistake loudness for leadership. The story becomes a parable that is uncomfortable because it does not allow for easy faces. There is no ambiguous villain. There is only a moment of cruelty and the predictable cascade that follows. Jamal returns to his routines. He walks the city with that same quiet pace. He reads reports, meets with company counsel to ensure the decisions he made are recorded and just, and then he sets them aside. The stakes were not satisfaction. They were correction. He has no appetite for revenge. His sense of justice is not theatrical. It is a ledger closed, not a bonfire lit. Months later, people still whisper about Vanessa and Richard. Their public images are more cautious now. They have learned humility, sometimes sincerely, sometimes performatively. Jamal's name surfaces in think pieces as the archetype of a discreet power that does not require announcement. He becomes a story that others tell to remind themselves that assumptions are costly. The last frame returns to a simple image: Jamal walking away from a city of glass towers at dusk, the lights reflecting like 1,000 tiny eyes. The soundtrack is spare, a single resolved note. He moves without flourish, the stain from that night long removed by time and a good tailor. The moral lingers like a faint perfume. Dignity is earned and owed, not assumed by entitlement. Respect carries a price no one should want to bargain away. If this flip surprised you, follow for more stories where quiet moves reshape the room. The video closes on a shot of a phone screen replaying the original clip, now a cautionary artifact. A man politely touched by scorn. A room rearranged by a single, measured response. The world learned that night that what is visible is rarely all there is to know, and that sometimes the most dangerous power is the one people refuse to see until it moves.